Hello, welcome to Jim's Allotment Garden. It's the 20th of February today. We've had a bit of a mixed bag of weather this week. There's been a reasonable amount of rain, and we've also had some nice, warm, dry weather as well. So in between all of that, I've been able to get on and do a bit of digging. I've used a few mussels that I haven't for a few months, to be honest. But welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so I just want to catch up with the comments and questions that I've had on the channel over the past week or two. And the first one comes from Nigel from DIS Wolves. Now, Nigel's been asking about Comfrey. I mentioned it last week in the video. And I just want to clarify. I will be doing a more in-depth discussion on this, but Comfrey is a really super thing to be growing in your garden, because obviously you could be making your stew in obviously a box like this from Comfrey, and you can also dig Comfrey straight into the ground. Now, Comfrey is high in nitrogen, and what I was talking about last time was when you're using it to compost. Now, if you compost any matter, the nitrogen is always used up in there. So if you're putting a lot of straw into the ground, if you're going to grow potatoes or something like that, even though potatoes don't need a lot of nitrogen, otherwise you end up with lots of tops and no potatoes underneath, you always need to consider that when the bacteria and stuff and the microorganisms in the ground are breaking down that straw into carbon, underground, it takes a lot of the nitrogen out of the ground. So if you're digging in a lot of straw, or a lot of brown matter, or if you're putting in a lot of sort of bark or wood chippings or anything like that, you need to consider that what will happen is that'll draw all of the nitrogen out of the ground and use it up. So what you need to do is augment that nitrogen into the ground. So if you're ever digging straw in, put a bit of coffee in or sort of whatever else. The thing is with Comfrey is it is rich in nitrogen. Now, normal compost is around neutral. So if you look at the NPK, which is the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium ratios within there, normal compost is sort of neutral, so it's like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, where the N is the nitrogen, P is the phosphorus, and the K is the potassium. With some compost can be richer than that. It can be up to 4, so it's always kind of balanced. So 4, 4, 4, or 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. The kind of compost that you grow in your ground, that you put into your ground that you make yourself. Now, Comfrey is rich in nitrogen. So if you look at Comfrey as in the green leaves, it's 1.8 for the nitrogen, it's 0.5 for the phosphorus, and it's 5.3, which is massive, for potassium. And that's why Comfrey makes fantastic fertilizer for anything basically in your greenhouse. So tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers. It's absolutely fantastic, because basically the potassium is used to promote the flowers and the fruits and the seeds of any plant. You can also use it on berries, so it's really good for strawberries, raspberries, and it's also really good for composting as well, because if you dig Comfrey into the ground as a green, so let the Comfrey grow, and it can grow up to kind of 4 foot, but what you want to do is cut it before it starts to seed. You cut off the top growth and dig that straight into the ground as a green manure. Because there's so much nitrogen in there, it doesn't take the nitrogen out of the ground when when all the bacteria and everything's breaking it down. And what it will do is it'll give you a very rich potassium content within the ground, which is good for all of the crops I've just said. What you don't want to use it for is things like carrots, brassicas, lettuce, because if you use it on those sorts of crops, it'll it'll basically make them run to seed prematurely, because there's so much potassium, the plant will basically just run to seed. So don't put it on brassicas, don't put it on any kind of leafy type plants. Also, if you're growing lettuce in your greenhouse, you don't want to put it on there either. But things like tomatoes, where you're actually eating the fruit, so tomatoes, cucumbers, anything like that, it's an absolutely fantastic water fertilizer. And I actually, in preparing these questions yesterday, I actually looked on eBay, and you can actually buy Comfrey juice over over on eBay. There's various places doing it, and it is a really fantastic fertilizer. And a 4 litre container of it, obviously you water it down to water on your plants, about sort of, I don't know, about 8 to 1, something like that. So I basically put a cup into a watering can, and then, you know, like a 2-gallon watering can, and then fill that up with water, and then, you know, water that on the ground. So that 4 litres would last you quite a long time. But that was £15 to buy over the shops, and you can over eBay, and you can grow it yourself and make it so easy. It's really, you know, simple to make comfrey juice, and I'll be showing you in the next month or so how to do that. But what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to transplant some of my comfrey into the allotment, so I can actually show you. Now, comfrey is a plant where, and this is why it's a really good plant. It's got roots very much like a it's obviously a perennial plant. It's a it's a herb, and basically the roots are very sort of thick. You know, sort of, they can get to almost like sort of 2 or 3 inches across the roots, and they go down into the ground to about 6 foot underground, and that's bringing all the nutrients from down there where all your plants can't get hold of it, bringing it up and putting it into the leaves, and then by composting the leaves, you're giving that you know, all them nutritions to the so you're releasing nutrition out of the ground, deep in the ground, that your other plants can't get to. So you know, from that point of view, it is really good, and it really is a super fertilizer to put on your plants. The only really thing, the only other thing I want to say about comfrey is it's also got quite a high calcium value as well, which is also good for your plants, and I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail as I go through the Mother Nature sections. But comfrey is really good. I can't sing its praise highly enough, and it's so easy to grow, and it's so easy to compost in many ways. You can dig it straight to the ground, as I say, as a green manure, or you can stew the leaves down and make a liquid fertilizer for all of your fruits and you know, and other plants that, you know, will benefit from it. So if you're wanting to save seeds from brassicas and stuff like that, what you can do is later in the season, what you can do is just a few of your plants, water it with comfrey, and then it'll increase the yield of seeds from those particular plants. So if you wanted to save your own seeds, you can also use it for that purpose as well. So that's comfrey. That was from Nigel in Wolverhampton. The next one, the next question is from there's been a few people. John Payne, thank you for all your comments. Nigel from Wolverhampton again. Ken Fuller, the Allotment Journal, and also Steve from Wenham. They were talking about the wormery, and what I've done to explain it. Now, when I get the worms, I will show you how I'm doing this, but it is really simple. All you need to do, in the bottom of your box, so right in the bottom here, you want about 4 or 5 inches of gravel, and get the sort of the rounded stones, you know, like you get to put in concrete. They need to be clean, and obviously, you know, sort of wash them out if there's any sand on them or anything like that before you put them in there. But you need about 5 inches of gravel at the bottom. Then you put some gauze, and what I'm going to use is, you know, the fleece that you use to put over carrots, you know, like flea. I always call it sort of fine flea mesh, to be honest with you, because it stops the carrot root fly and stuff like that. It's typically white. Put a layer of that, and that's to stop the worms going through into the gravel at the bottom. Then on top of that, you want to put about 6 inches of straw. That will obviously break down as time goes on, and that's just to allow the juices to go through and the worms not to go too low. You're encouraging the worms to stay high in the box by doing that. And you want to wet that straw. So what I would suggest you do is get a good handful of straw, or you can use shredded paper, but that can get a bit mushy. So you need something with a bit more structure. So I'd most certainly suggest you use straw, possibly hay, as long as there's no seeds in there. Put that in a bucket and soak it so it's wet, and then put that in. You want about 6 inches of that, and sort of compact that down. And then on top of that, you want to put your compost. So any scraps, kitchen waste or anything like that, put it on there. And at least to start with, you want probably about 6 inches. So start to save it in a bucket, and then chuck that in, and then sort of make about 6 inches. You can put other leaves in there. Obviously, any plant matter that you've got, you can put that in there. Then put your worms in, and then to keep your worms nice and moist, what I would suggest you do is get a whole newspaper, the full newspaper, not just a few sheets, and also soak that in a bucket of water till it's wet, and then just as soon as you put your worms in, put that wet newspaper on the top to basically to keep it moist in there, so the worms are nice and moist and so they can move around easily. So what I've done is I've quickly done a quick drawing just to sort of show you what that would look like when it's finished. So this is that drawing. One other comment quickly on the wormery is during the winter months, as soon as I've got it all going, what I will be doing is keeping the wormery in the greenhouse or in the shed or the garage or wherever, where it's nice and warm. You need to keep, obviously you can't let it freeze, but what you want to do is try and keep it warm. So what I would suggest, I think it was Nigel, he said, do you want to, would it be an idea to put some kind of sort of insulation around it? You can do, but you also need to make sure that in the summer it doesn't get too hot. Really, you want the temperature of the box to be around 20 degrees, so the worms will stop sort of doing their thing and sort of hibernate if it drops below 15 degrees. You most certainly don't want it to freeze, because you'll potentially kill the worms. And one other note is the worms, I've been looking on the internet, and the best place that I've found to get worms is on eBay, and there is, for 250 worms, they're about I think they're £2.95 over eBay, so that's pretty cheap. There are some others that are a little bit more expensive, but these worms, and I've been looking for the tiger worms over eBay, so they are quite cheap for £3 really, £3 or £4, you can set up your wormery and you're away. So eBay's the cheapest place that I've found. They're also used for bait for fishing. So if you go to a fishing type shop that keeps live bait, you're likely to find them there, and you're looking for either the red worm or the tiger worm. Either will do for a wormery. So that's basically the wormeries. The next one comes from Laura, from Foodie Laura, and she's saying wormery container. She's got basically a barrel which I think was used for brewing up drinks and stuff like that, wine, fermenting wine and stuff like that. You can use pretty much any container. It hasn't got to be square or round or anything, as long as it's reasonably big enough. Something kind of that kind of volume is more than enough. The only one thing that I would say, Laura, is what you need to do is after a certain amount of time, what you'll need to do is empty it all out. Put that compost onto the ground, fetch the worms out, and then start again, because obviously it will eventually fill full of actual compost. So what I would suggest is you cut the top off so you can get your hands in there and get it all out, and empty it all out. If you've got a small opening at the top, what I would suggest you do is get some kind of, I'm not quite sure what your barrel's made from. I'm assuming it's plastic. Just get a normal wood saw that will go through the plastic, or a jigsaw, or even an angle grinder, just to cut the top off, and then just basically put a lip round with some plastic. You could potentially use a pop bottle or something like that, just to make sure that the top doesn't fall off. But that will do perfectly well. Particularly if you've got a tap at the bottom, that's ideal. But just put the gravel, the straw, the net, the straw, and then your compost. Chuck your worms in, and whatever shape or size it is, it will do. As long as you've got a reasonable volume for the worms to get around, that will do quite nicely. The next one's from the next question is from Katie Lee, and I'd just like to say, Katie, thank you for all of the comments that you've put on the on the channel. I really do appreciate you know, a lot of the comments that you put on there. And basically, Katie was asking, when I was talking about composting, I was talking about not putting potato tops, strawberry leaves, and tomato plants. Now, the reason I don't compost these is because I get blight on the tomatoes and also the potatoes. So as a matter of course, I always dispose of them in the green recycling bin. I don't tend to compost them. Plus they're quite sappy, so there's not a lot of matter there really anyway. So they're not, from a composting value, they're not particularly high. So I just get rid of them, to be honest with you, just to be on the safe side. If you haven't had blight, there's no reason why you can't compost them. I have composted them in the past, but because I've had, in this allotment, because I've had a reasonable amount of blight, I just cut them all off and get rid of them, to be honest with you. I'll put them in a black bag, take them down the tip, or I'll put them in the green recycling bin. The strawberry leaves, I don't do that because I sometimes get a disease on the strawberry leaves called black spot, and what I don't want to be doing is encouraging that to be in the ground. It's like a fungal problem again, just like blight, so I typically burn those. But with potato tops, if you do want to put them on your compost heap, what I would suggest you do is lie them on the ground and let them dry out a bit, because there's a lot of moisture in there. You don't want your compost to get too wet. Let them dry out, and assuming that you've got no disease on there, there's no reason why you can't put them in a compost heap. Potato peelings, I'm sorry if I led you to believe potato peelings. I always use potato peelings. Potato peelings are a really good source of starch, carbon, and other you know, things to put in the ground. Potato peelings, most certainly, chuck them into the compost. They won't cause any problems. If you've got any diseased potatoes, if you've got any blight or potatoes full of worms and slugs and stuff like that, obviously dispose of those. But any peelings that you've got from healthy potatoes that you've used in the kitchen, by all means put them in any of the compost, most certainly the wormery, because they'll enjoy some potato peelings. But I think I've answered all your questions, Katie. Thank you for your comments again. Quickly moving on to Mike Bailey. Thank you for your comments, Mike. And he was asking me what I thought about tumble composting. Tumble composting are really good because basically what you've got is a barrel. You put your compost in there, and it's very easy to turn the composting over. And obviously turning the compost and keeping it mixed is really good if you want to fine compost at the end. The only drawback to them is they take quite a lot of room up, and you're only producing kind of a, you know, like a bag of compost every time you use it. So they are good. They're very easy. So, you know, for somebody that's possibly you know, not able to use a fork so much to turn the compost over, from that perspective they're a labour saving device. However, they take up quite a lot of room, and you know, you don't produce a lot of compost from them. However, because you're turning it, you're making the compost quicker anyway. So, but I've personally never had one because I thought they took up too much room in the garden. But it is a good idea for turning compost over very easily. So that's basically my thoughts on that. The next one comes from Geriatric Allotment here, and I'm sorry I can't send you a comment back for some reason. I'm not able to reply to any of your comments. I don't know quite why, but YouTube's not allowing me to respond to you. But I just wanted to say, following on from the bottle, 22 ways of making things out of recycled bottles. One suggestion that came back from the geriatric allotment here is is to cut off the top of the bottle, turn that top inside out and put it back inside, put some tape or some cable ties to secure it on, and then if you then put that on the side of your greenhouse or whatever, what you can do is that you can actually measure what rainfall has happened in that week or that month, because obviously it'll collect the water through the funnel part, you know, the upturned top part of the top, and you can measure, so you can use it as a water measuring device. So I thought that was a really good sort of 23rd way of recycling a bottle. So thank you for that suggestion. No, sorry, I've got it wrong. sorry, the geriatric allotment suggested to do exactly that, but fill this with sugary substance like Coca-Cola or something like that, and you can use it as a wasp trap. Sorry. Kay's allotment, sorry Kay, it was Kay that suggested to make a rain measuring device out of a bottle. So again, thank you Kay for your suggestion. So that's obviously 24. So that's sort of 24 ways of recycling a bottle. So thank you for that suggestions, and obviously to everybody out there, you know these are good ideas to use in your allotment. The next use of a bottle, coming from the bottle recycling bit, came from Nora Hepburn. Thank you Nora for all of your comments, and thank you for all the videos that you're posting as well. Lovely videos. What Nora suggests to use as the bottle, and what she actually uses is not these types of bottles. She uses the big milk bottle bottles. What she does is she makes a small hole in the bottom, and she waters her tomatoes with it in a greenhouse. So she suspends the bottle upside down. She obviously cuts the bottom off, and then rather than watering the ground at the bottom, she fills the bottle with water from the watering can, and then that slowly drips onto the tomatoes. And she said she's had some really good results from watering her tomatoes that way, because they get a slow, constant dripping of water rather than a quick, sort of watering from the watering can. So that's another really good idea. So I guess that's 25 or 26. I'm not quite sure where we are now. But thank you, Nora, for all of your comments. The next one comes from Gayrit, I think you pronounce it, and she was concerned about the materials that the bottles were made from, because there are some materials out there that are potentially dangerous. Now, I've researched this slightly. There's no markings on this whatsoever, apart from the fact it's got the fact that it's recycling. But underneath, very faintly, what you can actually read is PET, and I went on the Pepsi site to actually confirm that it was PTE. Now, PTE is polyethylene terephthalate, I think you pronounce it. Now, there has been some conjecture about this, and basically there's been some research done by the FDA, which is the United States of America Food and Drug Administration Department, and what they've done is they've done some tests on PTE, and they've deemed it to be a safe material to keep food in and to to use afterwards. So I believe that you're okay. I know that you had a few concerns about it, but according to them, who are obviously the official people to look at these sorts of things, they've said that it is safe to use. So I think that plastic is safe to use in the garden. The next comment comes from John Payne, and he said, "Can you use paper instead of straw when you in your worm and stuff like that?" Yes, you can do, but the purpose of the straw is to give the wormery a little bit of support underneath the compost. And if you use paper, as you know, what you can do is it can turn into like papier-mâché, and it'll actually form a barrier to stop the liquid coming through. So paper's good to put in the garden for holding moisture, because it'll break down into carbon. So it's good to hold in moisture and also creating the carbon dioxide for the plants to breathe. But I would not suggest that you use it in a wormery. I would suggest use either, as I've already said, either straw or grass would be much better, because you want something with a bit of structure in there, to hold all of the compost up and to keep the worms. But it also needs to be porous, so that the liquid that the worms produce will actually flow through and into the bottom, so you can collect it. So I would suggest for a wormery you use straw or possibly hay. Or really, that's where I'd suggest you use. I wouldn't suggest you put shredded paper in the bottom. So that's from John. The last but one comment. I just wanted to say thank you for all of the very humorous comments that Mark Davis has put on my channel over the past couple of weeks. Mark is a man after my own heart. He makes some fantastic videos. He's also a very skilled welder. He keeps chickens, he does fish, He does a lot of fishing. He's really good at plumbing, fabricating, and he's a really humorous, honest guy, which is something I really appreciate. And he doesn't kind of show you the, you know, he shows you all of the sort of the problems that he's had. You know, he doesn't try to hide anything, and he's and I think that's, you know, that's a really valuable thing to show people, that, you know, it isn't quite as easy as you perhaps make. You know, make it out to be at times. You know, sometimes you do make mistakes, and you've seen me when I'm making things. I'll start off with an idea, and then as I'm going through, I actually change the idea because I've either thought of something better to do, or I've had a problem and I've changed the way I've done it, or whatever. And I think that kind of thought pattern's really good for people to see, because you know, you need to be thinking on your feet and having a better imagination, which is something that Mark has clearly got. And I just want to say that Mark's made some fantastic videos over the past year or so, and it's been a real source of inspiration. So thank you for all the videos, Mark. And there's one other thing that I want to quickly say is, a gentleman put a comment on that popped up on my channel, asking me how I produce the videos. Unfortunately, I can't find this comment anywhere anymore. I don't know why, but it's either, you know, it's not one of the normal comments. So if you were that person that put the comment on, please put it on again, because I can't find the comment to respond to it. And then I'll explain how I record, produce, and publish the videos that I've made over the past year or so. So that's all the comments and questions that have come over in the past few weeks. Thank you for all of the comments and support for the channel. I really do appreciate everybody's time, and I hope that I've answered the questions that you put on the last few weeks. Well, I hope this episode of Jim's Allotment Garden has been useful to you. Please do put any comments, questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. If I don't write a response to you, I'll always try and answer it in the next episode or so. And thank you to everybody that's subscribed. I do appreciate your support with the channel. And I'll see you on the next edition of Jim's Allotment Garden.